Right. So that should be full screen for you, yeah?
Yep, yep.
Yeah. So we're just going to have a look at scriptures to do with the sea, really, and we're going to start off on the surface, and then we're going to go under the water. So the paths of the seas. It's in Psalm chapter 8, verse 8. It says this. It says, well, 6 to 8. It says, "Thou hast made him to have, this is man, to have dominion over the works of thy hands. Thou hast put all things under his feet, all sheep and oxen, yea, all the beasts of the fields, the fowls of the air, and the fish of the sea, and whatsoever passes through the paths of the seas." And it's this little expression, the paths of the seas, that the Psalms will have been written around about, I don't know if this is the Psalm of David, 1100 BC, 1100 BC, and there's a it's almost like a scientific claim that in the seas there are paths, and what we're going to show that this is true, and it's an interesting story of how it was discovered in the 1800s. These paths, these currents in the seas are now mapped, and we've got a fella called Matthew Fontaine Maury. He was an American, USA. He was a Southerner in the Civil War when he got injured. What is his date? 1806 to 1873. Matthew Fontaine Maury. So he was injured in the Civil War. He used to go to sea, and then after he was injured, he became office bound, and he was in charge of um, uh, the naval stuff in the. I think it might have been in one of the states rather than in Washington. And he loved his Bible. Matthew Fontaine Maury loved his Bible. In this statue, in his hand he's got a chart, and by his foot he's got a Bible, and in his other hand he's got a pen. And he read in the Bible in Psalm 8, verse 8, about the paths of the seas. And he said, well, if the Bible says there are paths in the seas, then there are paths in the seas. And he went about to discover them. And what he did is every ship that went anywhere at all, they were to report back to him on what they found, the weather, the currents, the wind also. And he became the first person. This is in the 1800s. Bearing in mind that Psalm 8 was written 1000 BC. This is so. We went to a place on a holiday once in Yorkshire. I can't remember the name of it. And there's a lighthouse there. And when you go visit the bottom of the lighthouse, it tells you how many ships were wrecked on that coast in the 1700s. And it's a phenomenal number. It's phenomenal. Partly the number of ships that were wrecked was phenomenal, but the number of ships that were on the sea must have been absolutely enormous. It was a world of wonder in many ways, and there was much suffering at the mercy of the seas, because it was a dangerous business. Because people were brave and they knew a little bit, but they didn't know enough to really keep them safe. And this was one of the motivations for our friend Matthew Fontaine Maury. This is the whole statue. I can't remember where it is, Pennsylvania or something. It got pulled down actually in the in the in the in the statue pulling down sessions they had a few years ago. It's not there anymore. So yeah, and what he did, he mapped currents that are in the seas, and this is not his map, but this is the map that you can use now. There are paths in the seas, like the Bible says. We know quite well. I'm sure you will have learned it at school. I didn't learn much at school. I learned good stuff out of school. But there's a thing called the Gulf Stream, which goes around the Gulf of Mexico, comes up over here, and wraps itself around Britain, or the British Isles. Sorry, British Isles, and keeps us all warm. If you look across from Britain, you were in northern Canada there, but they haven't got the Gulf Stream to keep them warm. So we've got this path in the sea that warm water comes from Mexico, wraps itself around us, and does us a lot of good. And so one of the uses of this map of currents is If you're a trader, if you're someone that goes to sea, this is the advantage is twofold. Firstly, it keeps you safe because if you go against these currents, you are in trouble. You are in trouble. These things are very powerful indeed. And if you catch on to these currents, you have a great advantage. So it was a great endeavour from Matthew Fontaine Murray. I'll tell you a little bit about a couple of the currents. There's one near the bottom called the Antarctic Circumpolar, and what that does, it goes all the way round, round and round and round and round, and it keeps the cold in the south. That the cold doesn't escape into higher than above it. So it has a purpose. You've got people have seen what's the film Finds and Nemo with all the turtles that are in the East Australia current, the EAC, which is 35 billion litres of water a second run through the EAC. And all these things keep life going. But for sailors, it's a fabulous thing to know. You can think of the amount of life he saved and the amount of money that he gained. So the benefit was twofold. It was both safety and prosperity. This is a quote from a fellow called Francis Bacon, an Englishman from the 1500s, Queen Elizabeth's time. In Liverpool, there used to be a library, and it had a Francis Bacon quote on it in gold letters. It had a dome on the top of the library, and in gold letters it had reading makes a ready man. No, sorry, reading makes a learned man, writing an exact man, and conference a ready man. And underneath it had bacon. And somebody climbed up and wrote a fat man. So in graffiti, when they used to have graffiti, one of my favourite bits ever, there was plenty of them. So and one of his quotes, which is I really like this quote. It says, "Nature to be commanded must be obeyed." So Matthew Fontaine Maury brought an understanding that could bring obedience, which meant you could command the seas. So yeah, I just like this scripture altogether. This is to do with the Ark of the Covenant, but it applies to a lot of things. Um, the Lord made a breach upon us, for we sought Him not after the due order. And in the seas, that there is a way to go. There is a way to go and a way not to go. In life, there is a way to go and a way not to go. And it's good to know the way. Another thing, this was not exclusive to our friend Matthew Fontaine Murray. It was, I think, Columbus did a bit of it, and it goes back way back. Is trade winds again from going for ships with oars. They went from ships with sails around about 1400. But before 1400, they never really went to discover. They just used to bump around the Mediterranean coast. Very few people would sail away. They didn't have the confidence or the knowledge, or there was reasons for that. We're going to look at trade winds again, similar to the paths of the seas, advantages and disadvantages. In Ecclesiastes, it says, "The wind goes towards the south and turns about to the north. It whirleth about continually, and the wind returns again according to his circuits." So it's like it's got a set circle. It's like the winds have got a set pattern. This is what Ecclesiastes is saying. You need a pair of glasses after you've read that as well. It's a perfect slide. If it looks fuzzy to you, go and see the optician tomorrow. Uh, these are the trade winds. Again, to take advantage of and not to go against would be wise. And gradually, people mapped them and mapped them, taking reports from every ship that came back in, and everything that happened. I'll show you. I'll show you the trade winds in the days of the Apostle Paul. So I like this story. It's the story of the shipwreck in Acts chapter 27. Um, uh, so Paul's a prisoner in a ship, and they're heading towards Rome, and they get to I can't remember where the place where they got to was. Melita maybe. No, that was the place they ended up. Yeah, and he's a prisoner in the ship, and it took them a long time to get where they got to. They were bumping along the coast. The weather was bad. They were bumping along the coast, and they get to a place, and he decides to sail further on. And Paul says, "Look, don't do it. Don't do it. There's going to be a lot of trouble." But he's a prisoner, so they ignore him. And later on, the ship is wrecked, and they end up. I think well, they end up in Malta. I've actually been to St Paul's Bay in Malta, where they ended up in. But there's just this little part of the story. I was looking at this the other week, and I looked into it a bit, and I found something a little bit interesting. It says, "Now, when much time was spent, and when sailing was now dangerous, because the fast was now already past, Paul admonished them and said unto them, Sirs, I perceive that this voyage will be with hurt and with much damage, not only of the lading of the ship, but also of our lives." Now, when it says the fast was past, I think it's I can't remember. Is it at the Day of Atonement? And what it is, it was a set time of the year. It's September. It's the equinox in this part of the year, in this part of the world. It's the equinox, and after the equinox in the Mediterranean, you get bad winds. And I believe I couldn't prove it, but when Paul says, "I perceive," it wasn't the Holy Ghost that told him necessarily. Maybe he was just well read on what was available. So at the same time of Paul, there's a guy called Pliny the Elder. Pliny the Elder, this is all the elders, they all look alike. Once you've seen one elder, you've seen them all. He wrote 37 volumes just at the time of Paul on all sorts of things: history, geography, and the winds in the Mediterranean, including Euroclydon. He wrote about it, and he said it comes up this time of year. So Paul, it may be that Paul knew that naturally. That's how he perceived it. One little thing with Pliny, I don't know if anybody's seen this slideshow before, but he died in. So he's the world's expert on natural history, if you like, geography and geology and all this. He's the world's expert, and he died in AD 79. And I won't get you to guess because it doesn't really work on Zoom. It's fun in the hall, but he was at Vesuvius. He was at Pompeii, and Vesuvius was erupting, and people were saying to him, "He's the world's expert. What should we do?" He said, "Don't worry about it. It'll be fine." And it buried him, killed him. There you go. That's the end of Pliny the Elder. So there it goes. Euroclydon, a cyclonic, tempestuous northeast wind which blows in the Mediterranean, mostly in autumn and in winter. They should have known. It was knowable. So jumping a little bit in talking about going to sea and all this, I want to change the subject from um, or join the subject up with what's under the sea. So it says, "They that go down to the sea in ships that do business in great waters, these see the works of the Lord and his wonders in the deep." And look, one of the reasons I like it. First of all, it's interesting just naturally, scientifically, but there is a spiritual side to all this. There is a spiritual side to all this. That we're going to look at what's in the deep sea, which is what's in the deep sea is being discovered day by day today. So they're finding things new. I don't know whether on a daily basis, new species, new creatures for sure, not necessarily new species. They're going to places they've never been to before. Not them, the machines that can now take the pressure. And uh, that's the same as us with the Word of God. I did a thing I really enjoyed. I just, on my electronic Bible, just put in the word deep, and I just started to scroll through many. I never got to the end. Many scriptures about it. With the idea that you're talking about things that are beyond what your eye can see. They're beyond what your eye can see. Here's a little video. I hope that works. The lady can be a bit annoying, but you put up with it.
We can't really hear the audio past Dave.
All right, hopefully the next one. Oops, don't start that again. Yeah. So we're going to look at things, the lady explained about to try to get an idea about the depths. And there's a place called, we're going to look in the midnight zone. So in the midnight zone, the pressure is enormous. She mentioned the little submersible that broke up a few months ago. Total disaster. It was made of the wrong stuff. It was the wrong shape. It had joints where it shouldn't have had joints. It had been down a few times, and they didn't understand that it weakens it. It's made of fiberglass. It's the wrong stuff to make such a thing out of, and it was rushed. And the reason man can't get down to see the wonders of the deep is because he can't take the pressure. He can't take the pressure. And when it comes to us getting into the good things of the Lord, we took the pressure. You took the plunge. We took the plunge. And it's a little pattern of the way things can work, I do believe. There's the Twilight Zone. And for those of us who like YouTube, that's Jordan Peterson's world. So it's pretty interesting, but it is things that can be no natural, but it's very, very interesting. It's very interesting. The Midnight Zone is where there is no natural light. Um, uh, Deep spaces like that, the deep seas like that. The Holy of Holies was like that. There was no natural light in that. And I'm sure in rural Ireland you've had it, but I can only remember once or twice in my life where I've been in the pitch dark, where you cannot see your hand in front of your face. I mean, cannot. It's so strange. It's so strange, right? And for me, being a city boy, it's very rare, and I could never get my head around it. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about a place where you naturally could not see your hand in front of your face. And what they're discovering, this is a quarter of the way down, by the way, is it's teeming with life. It's full of stuff. Um, just in passing, as I put this one, and this is in the British Museum. This is the Babylonian map of the world, and 900 BC, and there's a circle, and that's Bitter River. So everything inside this circle is Babylonia. It's their world, and the reason it's an interesting thing outside of their world is all sorts of stuff. It's got into the northeast. It talks about because it's got writing. It talks about a great wall towards China. Towards another place, it talks about a land where the sun never rises. Another one points to a place where there are massive birds that can't fly, right? But everything about the outside of the map is exaggerated and full of monsters, basically. It's full of monsters. And what one thing you can know about the Babylonian map of the world is the people that made the map never went outside the Bitter River. They might have heard about it, but they never went there because the descriptions are inaccurate. And again, it's just I just love that little idea of people can be like that about Christianity, true Christianity. They hear stories about it, which and some of them are exaggerated to the point where you think that, well, they haven't been. But here you go. Psalm 104. Lord, how manifold are thy works. In wisdom hast thou made them all. The earth is full of thy riches. And I've got to move myself. Am I going to do that? Yeah. So is this great and wide sea where there are things creeping innumerable, both small and great beasts. There go the ships, And there is that Leviathan whom I was made to play therein. Just in passing, I believe Leviathan is talking about anything that's gigantic. So it might be a gigantic fish, but it might be something gigantic or great on the land as well, but not necessarily the same thing. It just means something enormous. And so, because they discuss about that Leviathan, so you can think about whales and all this type of thing. And but it says that a creeping things innumerable, and that's as true today as it was in that day. They don't know how much more there is to find at all. They know there's more to find. They are innumerable, small and great beasts. And as we go through, I'll show you a few of the creatures that are down there in the midnight zone. What one thing you have to double check really is the size of some of them. Some of them you think, oh, that looks like it's enormous. Then you find out it's small. Hang on, I've got to get a lead from my computer. Phew. All right. Doesn't normally run out that quickly. Yeah. So uh, things innumerable and both great and small. One of the we won't do it, but you can put a pound on something and guess. I'll tell you afterwards. Is this a big thing or is this a small thing? Because um, that's I can't remember what that's called, a viper fish or something. One of the things with that, you see the size of its teeth. It can't actually bite anything. Can you imagine it trying to bite something and then swallow it? Its teeth are to make it the little fish that it catches prisoners. They're bars of a cage. They're not teeth for doing what teeth normally do. Um, the wonders of the deep. There are shoals of fish down there in the midnight zone, the size of Manhattan Island. Right? They're enormous. When they first discovered America, by the way, when the white fella first went, there were flocks of geese 70 miles long in the USA. You know that? There's a, if you like, I know Paddy likes books. Hugh Brogan's History of the USA, Penguin History of the USA. The first few chapters about that time are just amazing. Just amazing. I didn't get through the whole book. But you know, one of the things, a little bit like when they discovered the known worlds, as in Australia and America and all these things in those days. One of the motivations then was medicine and botany. So I think Cook that went to Australia, he was on a his endeavour was for botany because there are certain plants that are good for your health. They're good for medicine, and that was one of the things that drove people to go out and to search. We're talking about searching the deep sea. Same thing applies to searching the Bible. There's wonderful things in there for me and you, right? So in the deep sea, so the fish that are really down there, we couldn't eat them. They're full of oil. They're horrible. But animals could eat them, and we could eat the animals. Uh, there's things down there that move in such a peculiar way that you can biomimicry them. You can use things in medicine, in war. Um, uh, that stuff always goes there first. You know, we need to be defended. That's how it just needs to be. But biomimicry is a wonderful thing. So they find things in nature and they can replicate it for our benefit. Um, because of the concern over the damage to the planet, these things at the moment are not exploited. Uh, in one of the early Psalms we read that the man was to have dominion over these things. That would be my way of thinking, but I'm not in charge, so it doesn't matter anyway. I just carry on. They do what they like. But it's not just wonderful; it's of great benefit to us, or potential benefit to us, in all sorts of ways. This is the bloody belly comb jelly. Right now, one of the great things about the bloody belly comb jelly is it allows you to say bloody in a meeting. Right? I wouldn't say it on Medway YouTube, but this is Ireland. So if there's any trouble, it'll go that way. It is a little question for you. The biggest jellyfish is 90. This is down there, 90 foot long. You wouldn't want to meet that. Not everything. Not everything in the deep is good. Not everything in the deep is good. Um, these are about 6 inches. I'll show you. Hopefully, we'll have a little video at the end. Well, I'm going to put it on anyway, no matter how long I go on, and just let you enjoy the creatures. There's hundreds of them, and there's one channel on YouTube I'll play, and it shows you these people finding these things sometimes for the first time, and they are absolutely delighted. It's one of the enjoyable things is the creature and the delight of the people discovering them. Uh, Smopterus worms. Again, I'll show you this in the little video, and these are only a few centimeters long, that far down, and they find them. They find them, and they have this funny little bottle where they get them in. He put a little lid on them, and he bring them up, and they examine them and all this. And it's the way these things move. They are amazing movers. I'll show you that later. And it's just the potential for it all. Yeah, not everything down there is good. This is. It was voted the world's ugliest animal in 2013. It's called the blobfish. There's a very interesting thing I think about the blobfish. It doesn't look like that. This is on the surface. This is when it's exposed to natural light. It's exposed to our world, if you like, where it doesn't belong. It belongs in the deep, and in the deep, it looks much better than that, much more natural. And Mrs. Blobfish would think it was lovely, no matter what it looks like. I'm sure, right? And my little thought was that there's things in the Bible called mysteries, where we know part, but we don't know all. It talks about Christ and the church being a mystery, and a man leaving his mother and father, and him and his wife becoming one flesh as being a mystery. They don't belong on the surface. It doesn't belong in natural light. It belongs somewhere else, and it's there. One thing I've had a few, if this is towards the end of the year now, aren't we? And there's a few things I've really found good in the Lord this year, and one of them is embracing the fact that you don't know all about lots of things. That's just how it is. And that doesn't mean I don't want to know, and I don't want to know as much as I can know, and I don't want to know more. But to accept that there's some things that you're only going to know in part, that they belong in a place where it's not scientific. Science doesn't get on with God because it wants everything on the surface, and not everything belongs on the surface. As I say, I was going through scriptures, one after the other, to do with the deep. Um, I'll tell you a little story. I did this at the beginning of October in Medway, and I was putting the slides together, and it gets a little bit. You get a bit full of it, so I go and have a little break. And so when I had a break, and I was reading the paper online, and I reading a book review. Whoa. And this I thought it was a mouse. It was something moving on the table. We've got mice, and it was a book review, and the lady had written a book in Canada called "A Widow's Guide to Dead Bad Men," but she didn't use the word bad men. She used a different Old English word that's mentioned once in Hebrews. Because she's about 40. She had a son who was 9, had a husband, and he would go away for work all the time. He has a nice life. And one time he went away for work and he died. He dropped dead away, and a heart attack or something. And she was sorting out his business, and she went on his computer to sort something out, and she found a whole other world. Like, this is when I'm doing this slideshow. And she said, the world that I found was as big as the world. The world under the surface was as big as the world on the surface. Our world, my world. She ate his ashes. She ate some of his ashes. She was that, it wasn't good what she found. and I thought that was kind of one of the things with that story is what she forgave him after a while, because what she said was, well, what he did on the surface was good. He gave me a son, he gave me a home, he worked hard and all that. So quite an incredible story. I didn't buy the book. Brilliant title, a brilliant title. Just when I was going through scriptures to do with deep, there's this one and it's how does it go? I've got to move my home face. Hang on, I didn't mean to do that. Can I go back? How do I go back? No, that's I've only got two more back. And yeah, deep calls unto deep. At the noise of thy water spouts, all thy waves and thy billows are gone over me. This is the psalm when he's in trouble. That picture, by the way, is a painting in our house, which I absolutely love. I bought it online, and I've got loads of them with little flowers on them. You can see them behind my head. And one with a ship in a storm, and the one with the ship in the storm is the one. That's the one. And deep calls unto deep. What it means, or what it seems to mean, is one thing brings up another. They're connected. In the New Testament, it talks about iniquity unto iniquity. One thing pulls up another, that they're actually connected. And sometimes trouble comes one thing after another. But not everything in the deep is bad. So one discovery in the scriptures can lead to another. One conversation can lead to another. One good thing can lead to many, many good things. But deep calls unto deep. There's a connection, right? What I'm going to do? Oh, yeah, yes. What I'm going to do? It says it's just a thought for us. You know that I showed you the map of Babylon, the Babylonian map of the world. Um, uh, and they didn't really know what was outside, and they didn't have the courage to go out and see. The Greeks knew what was outside. The Greeks knew much more, but they never bothered either. They just never bothered. So they didn't discover all the things that could be discovered. The wonderful world that we live in, which in many ways it is. I suppose it's a thought for us. Jesus in the ship with the fishermen, it says, now when he had left speaking, he said to Simon, launch out into the deep and let down your nets for a draft. And you know, this is our life. This is our life. You know, we don't want to be naive about the dangers, but not everything's dangerous. Sometimes the world we live in is over. The dangers are exaggerated. Newspapers do that a lot. If you read the local news, you never leave your house, and but there's much good to be discovered. There's much wonder to be discovered, much life and new life to be discovered. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to play this. This is 10 minutes, which would take me up to about the right time. It's one, but there's loads of this on YouTube. Once you've watched one, deep calls onto deep, they call up another one, and so you get similar videos. But you know, some of these things are wonderful, and I just want to share that. Everyone.
Hey, Pastor Steve, can you turn on the original sound? We can't hear.
Did you say something?
Yeah, can you turn on the original sound? We can't hear it. Up the top.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, up the top right. There should be.
top right.
Well, there should be something somewhere that says original sound from musicians. Or did you share the sound when you go to share the screen? There should be a tick box to say share sound.
Well, didn't you hear the first one either then?
No, we didn't.
Hang on. Right. Let's do that again.
We
So I'll
saw
have to start from the very beginning then, won't I? Yeah. So slide number one, or last slide. Right, okay. Hang on.
Hey everyone, Patrick from the Monterey Bay Aquarium here. Our colleagues at MBARI are always finding amazing wildlife in the deep sea. And everything they show us at the aquarium is the coolest thing that we've ever seen, but we've always wondered, what are their favorites? So here they are. These are MBARI's top 10 deep sea animals.
I have spent my entire career trying to get people excited about worms because most of the time when people think about worms, they think about the earthworms, and they're not that fun to look at. Tomopterous worms, they do this amazing undulating dance in order to swim around and feed.
The animal is able to swim really rapidly, maneuver very tight turns, and it can stop on a dime by arresting the motion of all of its legs and then reverse direction without changing the direction of its body. And so it's pretty incredible what these small animals are able to do, and no robotic system has been able to replicate it. So they're something we're definitely interested in trying to reverse engineer.
Crassota mills-eye, when you first look at it, it looks like fireworks are going off in the evening sky. It is just a gorgeous animal. It's got tentacles that go off in every direction, and then if you disturb it a little bit, it pulls everything in and jets off in a different direction, and it's like it wasn't even there.
It's an animal we see every once in a while. It's not very common. It's a beautiful, tiny little jelly. These rare gems, we get really excited when we see them.
The Pacific viperfish is a great example of many things we notice about deep sea fish. It has long, sharp teeth.
It makes them look fierce, and I think the result is that they are fierce, at least to their prey.
Their teeth are so large and they sit outside of its mouth that it can't actually close its mouth.
These giant teeth are not actually impaling anything. The teeth act like bars on a jail cell to keep the food, say a shrimp, from swimming back out of the mouth.
One of the other types of animals we find in the deep sea is this beautiful squid. And we've given it the name the strawberry squid because when you look at it from the side, it has all these little dots that make it sort of look like a strawberry. It has one big eye and one small eye.
It has one really big eye in order to see the shadows or silhouettes of potential prey against the lighted waters above. Its other eye is small, and it's designed to see pinpoints of bioluminescence. It's bizarre to us because they seem ill-suited to survival in our world, but in the deep sea, they're perfectly well adapted.
Feather stars are these animals that are related to sea stars, and they live on the sea floor.
They look like a flower that can't move, but then all of a sudden they'll swim off into the darkness.
I love seeing things swim, and to me, the feather star and the way they swim, it's almost like they're walking through water. It's pretty incredible to watch. Phronema.
They look like a nightmare, but they're really amazing.
Phronema is this amphipod, which is basically like a little shrimp-like animal. And they take another animal, like a salp, they go inside, kill it, eat out the insides, and then lay their eggs in the dead carcass of this animal. It's like the creepiest thing ever.
She's got these big eyes and these big claws, and she looks really scary if she wasn't only, an inch long.
Pompeii worms are one of the most thermotolerant animals in the world. These crazy little fuzzy-wuzzy worms live on hydrothermal vents. It's essentially an underwater volcano with piping hot water coming out of it.
The temperatures can get 200 degrees Celsius. We're talking hot, and the Pompeii worm seems to thrive in these temperatures.
How they do this is they have a fleece-like coating of bacteria that helps protect them from some of the hottest water that comes out of the vents so that they can extract minerals from the vents. And then they extend their gills out into much cooler water, which is how they breathe and extract oxygen out of the water. They do this little dance in between the cooler water and the hotter water, in and out of their tubes. So they're like hot, 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 cool, cool, cool.
Bloody belly comb jelly is one of my personal favorites, and I have to admit I'm a little bit biased because I was fortunate enough to be one of the researchers who described this beautiful animal.
Most animals in the deep sea can't see the color red. And so in order to hide really well, the bloody bellies are this beautiful bright red color.
I think they look like hearts. That's nerdy.
They do. The bloody belly comb jelly has these 8 rows called teen rows, and that's how the animal moves around. The light flickering that you see is light bouncing off of these little hair-like projections on the body of the animal.
They diffract the light into the colors of the rainbow, and so it looks like the most beautiful animal with 8 rows of rainbows moving through the water. Vampire squid is an animal that's captured people's imagination for years. Vampiroteuthis infernalis, the vampire squid from the depths, or the inferno.
For the longest time, we weren't sure what vampire squid actually ate.
I mean, it sounds like kind of a blood sucker, right?
The vampire squid doesn't suck blood. The vampire squid likes to eat poop raining down from the surface. This is how it gets its food.
They stick out this feeding tentacle that captures sinking dead animals and waste that's raining down from near the sea surface. It's gross.
The filaments are sticky. They're kind of like half of a Velcro strip. The vampires drag this filament behind them, collect all kinds of bits and pieces of drifting matter. That's a unique feeding mode that we don't see in any other cephalopods.
Why did this animal get its name vampire squid? We're not actually really sure. It's not nearly as scary as it sounds.
But the vampire squid's a cool name.
Probably the most common question I get is, what's the weirdest thing you've ever seen in the deep sea? And I really have to say the barrel eye, because there is no example of a fish that looks like that.
The barrel eye is an amazing fish. When we first came across one alive in its natural habitat, we were really surprised.
The animal's eyes, you might think, are looking forward, those little black dots. But in actuality, the green orbs that are pointed upwards are its eyes. It's covered in this gelatinous sheath, which is completely transparent.
They have this tiny little poochy mouth sticking out in front, and the eyes were looking up. There was no way that the fish could see what it was eating, which always bothered me. What's the point? How does this work?
Our scientists discovered that the eyes can rotate so that it can keep its eye on the prey above it and just rotate and grab the food.
Monterey Bay is the best studied patch of deep ocean on the planet. And yet we're still finding new things every time we go out. It's exciting to think that there's that much more to be discovered in the rest of the world ocean.
That's it. You know, as I say, you could liken the world's ocean to our Bible and us in it. You know, so much to discover, so much to find. No matter how much you've found, so much to find, and not just wonderful, but very, very useful for people who know how to use it. That's the end of the first lesson. Oh.